watching Morning Ride on Delta Television, the People's Pride. We've had that wonderful conversation. Thank you, Lord Henry CIO, for a brilliant conversation with the Honorable Commissioner for Environment, Honorable Ejiro Jamani. It was beautiful. We must keep our environment and sustain it if we want to live in this same environment. Now let's look at the papers and see what is actually top of the stories on our papers this morning. It's time for paper review. We're looking at major stories from the Vanguard, This Day, Nigerian Telegraph, The Punch newspaper, Daily Sun newspaper. Most of them are out here for us to look at. So we'll start first with The Nation newspaper. The big story on The Nation newspaper says, Tinubu orders comprehensive probe of fake federal agency. Tinubu orders comprehensive probe of fake federal agency. Now we're aware about that agency that raised dust recently, the one that had the DG Adeyemi, but it was actually a fake one, although it found its way into the Nigerian budget. We are wondering really how far that would go for the presidency and the president himself. He has spoken, this time not from the presidency. He wants a full probe, and I think the country wants that as well, so they can have a feeling of safety in the country. It has several riders, this story. ICPC gets 30 days to submit report. Gbajabiamila threatens 10 billion naira defamation suit. That's a very heavy one, and this is quite crystal important because Gbajabiamila's name has been the one who is actually on the dent now. It's been very stained with this whole thing. I remember that the federal government also said that is not from Gbajabiamila's office. That particular area is not from his office or granting such a position to anybody. But let's see how this unfolds. We hope that it is properly probed and actions are dished out. There are beliefs all around the country that the fake DG would have not acted alone. He probably acted with people who are right there at the Aso Rock or with the presidency. So let's find out really as time goes on. At the top of Nation newspaper, we have more pressure on abductees to free Orire victims. That's on news page 3. NRS targets 50 trillion naira tax revenue by December. That's on page 2. Row among lawyers over leaked memo suspending NBA election on page 4. Terrorists killed in Katsina as ISWAP chief surrenders. That's on page 30 of the Nation newspaper. At the bottom strip, GTN FLNG signs, so I'll take it again, GTN FLNG signs gas sale agreement GSA with NNPCL Seplat Energy. That story is on page 3 of the Nation newspaper. So as always, we would urge you to go grab yourself a copy now, just like Bollywood movies. Okay, go grab yourself a copy now and see indeed yourself the stories. Remember, if you read the stories, you would understand the story better and know where we stand in the whole mix of things. Next, the New Telegraph newspaper. The New Telegraph newspaper has the headline here, Xenophobia, Senate demands probe into attacks on Nigerians in South Africa. This is one of the most troubling stories we would see on headlines globally because the continent seems to be at war with South Africans in South Africa. And I say that because there are South Africans who live all around us, but no one dares give them any kind of coldness at all. It's just South Africans in South Africa who feel like their jobs are being taken. And when these things began to occur earlier on xenophobia, many of them looked like they were from, fake reports, old reports. In fact, you want to tell yourself it's AI, but credible news agencies are beginning to bring out footages and videos that are really compelling, very compelling, so compelling. So that becomes a problem. South Africa is going after non-South Africans in their country, other Africans in their country. And someone even said that you left white people who are in your country, but your major targets are the blacks. And that is quite troublesome or worrisome. We really wish that something be done. I remember that Adams Oshomole, one time proposed that South African companies are taken out of the country. And so other people have that belief that, okay, there should be a Cold War in South Africa so South Africans can understand that we're a global village. At the same time, some of the South Africans also spoke and shared their opinion, saying that Africans need to go to their countries and develop their countries, and not leaving entirely. But violence is never a way at all. If you're dealing with illegal immigrants, if you're having more restrictive measures on immigration in your country, that's better off. But having to batter, beat, or kill people is quite terrible. Indeed, there are businesses that have been abandoned. A video yesterday from Al Jazeera showed where a store belonging to some other African was taken by some South African xenophobia, people, anti-immigrants, South Africans. And it just really bothered me how the country is going. So a lot is happening in South Africa. Let's look at other stories at the top strip of the New Telegraph newspaper. It says, OPS to Senate approving 11 trillion naira revenue target for customs, tragic for investment. Report, financial professional service sectors emerging Nigeria's growth drivers, on page 8. Tinubu orders ICPC to approve PFIPC Adeyemi collaborators. And the keyword there is collaborators, really. They should be handled. Let's not forget that the man had an office at the Federal Secretariat. And if you say it's a fake, it's a sham, what he has, how can you have an office at the Federal Secretariat and your agency has a budget which was read by the president himself, and we can call it fake? So thorough probe should be out there. And what Nigerians expect is to find out who was involved in it. And Gbajabiamila has a lot to do in clearing his name and his image for the greater good of Nigeria and Nigerians, so that whoever was involved in this will be gotten and just kind of nipped in the bud. Other stories on the front page of the New Telegraph newspaper: alleged abuse of office, El-Rufai's trial stalled as ex-governor insists on new judge. And then at the bottom strip, hypertension, diabetes cases rising among young Nigerians. This from the EFCC. I wonder how. But you can get that story on page 27 of the New Telegraph newspaper. Daily Sun is next. The Daily Sun newspaper. Owerri school children. Credible intelligence aids tracking. Arrest of abductors associates. The writer, Akpabio laments continued captivity of pupils, says insecurity threatening investment, food security. Top strip. Tinubu gives ICPC 30 days to probe PFIPC submit report. The bottom strip. Ekpemukolo rallies support for Tinubu, says reforms working. Those are the views of Ekpemukolo, and you find that story on page 28 of the Daily Sun newspaper this morning. UTM FLNG signs 15-year gas sales agreement with NNPC Seplat Energy JV for 200 MMSCF D gas supply. That's on page 25. And then we have xenophobic attacks. Senate seeks fresh diplomatic guarantees for Nigerians in South Africa. As the final story on the front page of Daily Sun says, NBA rejects Attorney General's alleged order to postpone 2026 elections. Now, on xenophobic attacks, it's important to note that there are still some Nigerians in South Africa. Not all Nigerians have left South Africa. In fact, I spoke to a friend of mine in South Africa. He's very comfortable, matter of fact, and I think he's in a school environment. So it means that South Africa should invest more in education and really sensitize the people as well, and ensure that those who are involved in this are really dealt with, for the greater good of the continent. This is beyond just one country. This is about everybody. Let's not forget that Nigeria in the 70s or 80s had the Ghana Must Go drama too, where Ghanaians who were in the country were asked out of the country, but it was not this violent. It was more diplomatic, even during the military era. So I wonder what's going on in SA, South Africa. The Vanguard newspaper is next. The big headline: insecurity, halt rehabs, try Boko Haram members, Senate tells federal government. Tinubu orders ICPC to investigate PFIPC. Oyo school kidnap, security forces trace abductors, network associates. Other stories on the bottom strip: over 18 million Nigerians exposed to flooding, NESA warns. And the writer to that story says 2,000 hectares of farmland 8,794 educational facilities, 3,808 healthcare facilities will be submerged. This is on page 9 of the Vanguard newspaper. So that story was right here on Justice Television and also on the radio arm. Delta State happens to be one of the states that will experience a flooding, so we must be very careful. Those who need to leave where they stay because it's low tide need to leave a lowland area and go to higher areas. And also the government has to be proactive. Sensitization is good, but actions are even better. So take action, go out there and ensure that people are in safer places really, so that we don't continue to experience the havoc that is caused or wreaked by the flood. We expect more this year, even though we've seen heavy rainfalls and thunderstorms that have bewildered people more than it has in recent times. Globally, it's seen as climate change, but the country also and the state must rise to the occasion. If there are trees around areas that are old, just like we found out around the Okpanam Road area, they should be cut down. We should have trees that are healthy. Billboards should be properly planted also to avoid storm and the things that can come from shaky billboards and old trees. Also, like I said earlier on, those who are around lowland areas should be asked to go to higher areas, higher grounds, so they can survive. So start now. Do not wait until that trumpet sounds and you begin to become a victim, displaced, before taking action. And the government has to do more than just conversations, but actions have to be done to ensure lives are saved, even properties as well. Our next newspaper this morning is The Guardian newspaper. The Guardian newspaper is next this morning. The big headline: anxiety as planned expansion may affect 2,700 buildings, 10,800 homes. Excuse me. That's on the front page of the Guardian newspaper this morning. Anxiety as planned expansion may affect 2,700 buildings, 10,800 homes. This is from the Lagos Calabar highways. And the big picture there is the flood. I think this is Lagos. It was not really shown where, but this is indeed worrisome. So if we are doing anything about expansion of roads and everything, we must ensure that we follow it properly, so we don't experience issues like this, the flood issue that has affected the country so badly, Lagos precisely. Other stories on the Guardian newspaper. 2007, APC pleads with substituted aspirants to shelve litigation. That's on page 3. That's the APC matters. I hope they can handle that one very well. Oyo abductions, pressure mounts as operatives close on abductors. Xenophobia, despite outrage, Senate rejects reciprocal action against South Africa. Remember, I was talking about how the senator from Edo State, one-time governor of Edo State, Comrade Adams Oshomole, was talking about taking actions against South Africa as a means of showing them the heavy hammer to what's going on. But clearly here it says that Senate rejects reciprocal action. So there shall be no action taken against South Africa than words. And I really hope that Nigerians in that country are safe, so to speak. The argument is, should we let our businesses suffer because of this thing going on in South Africa, knowing that some South African companies have employed many Nigerians? And so if you take away these companies, first of all, you create unemployment, and then business also would suffer. In a country that is going through economic downturn, you don't want to joke with anything that would bring you money or secure the purse or the bag, as the Gen Zs would say. However, there are other arguments that says that no life is worth any amount. It's worth $1 trillion in the first place. So we must show that lives matter first. It's a very heavy debate, really. For those who have been attacking MTN, recently the CEO of MTN Nigeria spoke about it, and he has really reassured Nigerians that, first of all, MTN Nigeria feels the pain and the pulse. Teshola, he said he feels the pain and the pulse of Nigerians in South Africa and feel devastated and send all the love, to everyone, knowing that they reject what's going on and they really condemned it. However, he's also noted that MTN Nigeria is not the same as MTN South Africa. In fact, it says the MTN Nigeria family is owned by Nigeria, and then the MTN globally just has 50% owned by South Africa, while other percentages is owned by countries all around the world. So it doesn't exactly affect MTN. That was what he came to say. But then
I know Nigerians are angry. We just also encourage Nigerians not to handle a madman by being a madman. What am I saying essentially? If Nigerians are being violent, we should not be violent to respond to violence. We can find other responsible ways of handling the situation and nipping it in the bud. Still on the Guardian newspaper, Nigeria's population growth may worsen sanitation crisis, AFDB warns. Senate rejects Boko Haram rehabilitation, says justice must prevail. This has been something people have been complaining about. You get Boko Haram members, you take them for rehabilitation, and then you integrate them into society. And that becomes a big issue, really. Is that the way to go? People feel safe with having these people come around. And why do we arrest other criminals yet? Those who are incurring terror in society are rehabilitated and given some kind of retirement benefit. It's been something that people have frowned at. And the conversations about global standards against terrorism says no negotiation with terrorists. This was heavily promoted by the American government. But we saw how the government of Goodluck Jonathan, before Goodluck Jonathan, Yar'Adua of blessed memory, where Goodluck Jonathan was vice president inside the amnesty program, which indeed more or less miraculously nipped the Niger Delta militancy pressure in the bud. We saw how that worked back then. So I think that's the sentiment that perhaps that some of the Nigerian government officials would have about Boko Haram members. But are they the same thing? That's the big question again. Is Boko Haram the same thing with the Niger militancy? Since they were crying about exploitation of their society, their communities, and I believe if you've been around the creeks, you would know that those who are in communities where oils are being drilled from, they don't look like what they give to society or to the country. They look really downtrodden. There is no development, no schools, hospitals. Social amenities are just nowhere to be found around there. They live in the caves, really, precisely bamboos and leaves. So you begin to wonder, really, begging for crumbs from those who might be ferrying the rivers in a society or a community where they drill this oil from. So understandably, Niger Delta militants were begging or fighting or clamoring against that kind of unfairness, in quote, that was meted against the so-called, what's it called again? The so-called Niger Delta people. That matter was handled by the Yar'Adua government. But now we're seeing Boko Haram coming, and people do not know exactly what the clamor is about. And there are different groups of Boko Haram also springing up. Let's not forget that as well. With different mantras, with different complaints. One of them is about, the very popular one is no to Western education. And are we going to meet their need of saying no to Western education? That's the big question we should ask ourselves. If their demands are not feasible to meet, then should we indeed focus our energy rehabilitating them? That's the big question to the Nigerian government, really. More stories right here on the front page of the Guardian newspaper. NBA cites autonomy, rejects NGF's intervention in officers' election. Police probing 30 political killings ahead of Osun Guber polls. Those are the stories on the front page of the Guardian newspaper this morning. So do yourself the fairness of grabbing yourself a copy now. You can go online to read up yourself and be informed. The Daily Trust is next. Tinubu 6 answers over Phantom Council. Tinubu 6 answer over Phantom Council. That story has been everywhere. Different headlines, different captions. Indeed, we must understand what happened there, what played out. How do we get that kind of council? How do we get that kind of agency in the country that has itself in the Nigerian budget and given about 1.4 billion naira? All the inconsistencies must be given out. People must know exactly where they stand. This is also a democratic government, so let's make this very clear regardless. The government is answerable to the people. It's not the other way around. And every time it seems that people have begun to somehow perceive that they are mostly answerable to the government. You will be answerable to the government if you break the law, if you do something anti-government, anti-people. But if you are in the government, you are first answerable to the people. So people are asking the question, what happened? How did a man pull off that kind of stunt, have an agency at the Federal Secretariat, Has his agency been appropriated monies on the Nigerian budget? How did that happen? That's the big question. We know the man who is the culprit. He has been held. He should be tried. But who aided and abetted him? That's the big question. And until we handle that kind of issue, we will not handle other issues in the country. Let's make this also clear that the fight against terrorism has been mostly attributed to the failure to get those who sponsor terrorism. It means that if people keep on shooting, you take off their guns, not take off those people. Because you take off the people, they can hand over the guns to their sons, friends, or maybe loved ones who do not love the enemies. Maybe the country is the enemy. So what do? You cut the supply. Whoever is aiding and abetting or aiding and abetting any kind of act that negates the peace of this country should be the one we should deal with. So we are insisting in the country, journalists have been insisting that those who aided and abetted him, and we're not pointing fingers at anybody, but the man has pointed finger at Gbajabiamila. It's a very big one, and he holds a very important office in the country. He's the one who runs things for the president, precisely. He's the one you see first before you see the president. Talking about the chief of staff. So if we must have this thing to work, the chief of staff has to ensure that his staffers pursue this case. The president has to ensure that this is chased as well. We must do something, really, before we can have peace. And I think that we should not overlook this particular story. It should not feed off like other trending stories in the country. It should be followed up to the latter. Top Strip of Daily Trust still says this one, that woman burns boyfriend's daughter to death. Woman burns boyfriend's daughter to death. Wow, that's a very odd and scary story. National Assembly inserted road projects into our budget and Marjorie Commission. This is coming from them. And then at the bottom strip of the Daily Trust newspaper says, Senate to FG, stop rehabilitation of repentant Boko Haram members. That's a very strong one. It's instructive. It's what we have been clamoring for. Stop rehabilitation of Boko Haram members. Do not rehabilitate them anymore. Arrest them so that people do not feel that that's a means to get a job. That's a means to get paid somehow. The Punch newspaper. Fake agency scandal. Tinubu orders 30-day ICPC probe. Senate rejects blame. And yes, of course, they should be blamed because they were the ones that approved the budget of the president. You see how this thing is so much interwoven into different areas. Because if the Senate does its job properly, they should investigate every single thing budgeted for, every single area, every single aspect. That means they'll find out the authenticity of the so-called fake agency. If the agency was fake, how did it find its way into the budget and approved by the Senate? Top strip of the Daily Punch newspaper. Dangote breaks ground on $17 billion Kenya refinery. Xenophobia. Senate pushes sanctions against South Africa on this probe. And then ICPC, this story is attributed to them on page 24. El-Rufai abused medical visit, doctor arrested. We know that this is what many top ex-officials or actual officials do when they have issues. They have medical reports issues. It's usually the style, but I hope that this one is handled properly. Bottom strip of the Punch is about NBA insists on officers' election amid AGF row on page 24. Ogun records 161 deaths from 415 road crashes. That's really instructive there. I really hope that something is done about that one, really. Something should be done about it. That's a story that made the front. Those are stories that made the front page of the Daily Punch newspaper this morning. Finally, we look at the Daily Independent newspaper. The big story here says FG's $1 billion AFCTA fund may fail without structural reforms. That's the big story on Daily Independent newspaper. Other stories here. Senate raised tough sanctions against South Africa over xenophobia. Avoid collecting unsolicited gifts. CJN warns new judges. And I think we should take that one seriously. After all, the FIFA president was once taken off the seat and was tried because he received the watch. So we should take things seriously. Despite distractions, oppositions vow to unseat ruling APC from page 6. I wonder if that's going to work. NAS inserted 8.4 billion naira road project into our budget at the Marjorie Commission. Amid criticisms, Tinubu orders 30-day ICPC probe of PFIPC. And the other says, why we are staying out of PFIPC controversy by the Senate. You go find out why by checking out the papers this morning. Ajokuta Steel, NNPCL signed landmark 20-year gas supply pact on page 29. Top strip, broadband subscriptions in Nigeria surged to 120.7 million naira after 9 months streak. Finally, at the top strip, fake PFIPC, but the Bamila denies knowing Adeyemi. That's all right. That's all right. We should investigate and find out really what happened. Those are the dailies this morning. I would beg you, not just encourage you, to go check out these stories yourself and have yourself your own understanding and knowledge, perspective, informed perspective about these stories, because you need to know. If we want to make this country grow, we need to all be involved. We need to know what's going on. With proper knowledge, we can act and speak constructively in a way that can shape Nigeria. All our hands are needed to be on deck to make Nigeria work out. And that's how we say good morning and goodbye to you on this edition of Morning Ride, Wednesday's edition precisely. My name is Francis Ofulue, urging you to stay tuned to Dare Television, the People's Pride. More programs coming up, and they're all going to be interesting and worth watching. Goodbye and good morning.